Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tima show. You are now rocking with your girl, Tima, and she has a special guest with her, her first special guest. Why am I speaking to myself in third person? I have my first official guest for the Tima show, and it is none other than my brother for a very long time, Geo Derice. And I think that I won't do him any service, any good service in introducing him. So I will allow him to introduce himself and we'll get started.
Thank you for having me. Introducing yourself. Where do I start? Oh, I'm.
We're
Yeah. Where do I start with that? Like, I feel like that's such a loaded question. Um, Now I feel like I got a son, so now it starts with father before I do anything else. Right? I'm a dad first and foremost, but no. Other than that, I'm a motivational speaker, best-selling author, and I specifically help people through my company to go and tap into their fullness of their dreams, their goals, the vision to go and make that become a reality. And I've done that in many different ways, whether it's helping people write a book, whether it's giving a motivational speech, whether it's giving some type of life coaching or mentoring. But I believe my life purpose is to help people live theirs. And so that's me in a gist.
Thank you. And that is a lot. And we're going to break all of that down here today. I know that you are, Micah, he is the cutest thing. Oh my goodness. The cutest thing. I'm so distracted because I'm just like, those cheeks. Oh my
You're lucky you're
God.
not in person. People say the cheeks and the eyelashes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So you spoke about, this is a great segue into purpose. I told you that when I reached out to you wanting to have you on the show, that your statuses, your recent statuses on Facebook. Yes, people, we are still on Facebook. Um, um, it really, because I've been thinking a lot about purpose and living a purpose-driven life, and you were hitting some of the status that you were posting really were hitting home for me. And so when you hear the words purpose-driven life, what does that mean to you?
First thing that comes to mind to me is that it's being intentional. That nothing is accidental, whether it's your experiences, the environments that you find yourself in, all of it was with a purpose in mind. And so, if that is the case, when I think of purpose driven life or living a purpose driven life, I think about literally like every single move is intentional. Like everything is on purpose. Like nothing is accidental. The family that I was born into was not accidental. My faith is not accidental. The friends I have is not accidental. So like literally all the connecting pieces in your life is all intentional, which then makes me feel excited because I feel like you can't. I don't get excited about accidents, right? But I think purpose makes me feel like okay, there's something to pursue because of the fact that I was here on not with intention. Like I got a plan for you, and I
On
think that's the part
purpose.
of it that's excited. Yeah, it's on purpose. Like you're here. Why am I born in Brooklyn, New York? Like why do I live in Brooklyn, New York? Right? Why am I Haitian American? Why why it took 7 years to go and have a child? Like everything is intentional. And so the minute you have that, the next question becomes, well, then what am I supposed to do with it? Where am I, like, how do I go and cultivate an environment where this purpose continues to make sure that it actually happens versus like, oh, well, I kind of fell into it. Like, no, it's not falling into it. It's really like living through it intentionally in everything that you do. And it makes life a little bit easier because I think doubt makes people feel like they don't know how to move, so they feel stuck. Oh, I'm not sure. But when I have purpose, there's a boldness that follows the fact that I have it, even if I don't know what it is. Like,
Mm, yeah. So, and we'll talk about that. I think, you know, being a creative entrepreneur myself and dabbling into that, there is such a, I don't know, my journey has been riddled with fear. Um,
mm,
and for a while, it's been really the thing that's holding me back because I'm like, I don't know what's ahead.
Right.
I do know that I can do a 9 to 5. So I've been trying to, and I was like, no, we're doing this thing. You're doing, and this is final. This is what it is for you. And so, even to take that step without knowing what's ahead is pretty admirable, and you've done pretty well for yourself.
Thank
Um,
you.
I think that um, before you can move forward, you have to. I believe in the Sankofa. Like, in order to go forward, you have to look back. And
Hmm.
so you describe several different demographics and things, identities. So could you tell us a little bit about um, what it was like for you growing up? You talked about Flatbush, and I know that you were an athlete, right?
Yeah, yeah, I played several sports in high school.
Okay.
Uh, Football, tennis, believe it or not.
Wow.
I wasn't that good though in that sport. But no, when you say going back and the growing up, and it's interesting that we're having this conversation because I was just going through therapy and we were talking about that very same thing.
Yes, therapy. What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm big on this. It's been
Black
almost,
therapy. We love it.
was it 2 years now? Been almost 2 years in, and so
Yes.
yeah, no, more is going to come out on that for sure. I think it's so important. But one of the things that we realized in growing up, I grew up in a very strict household, right? And when I say strict, I don't mean like I was fearful of being beaten or something. But what I meant was, as a child, you don't really understand set apart. As a child, you don't understand we do things a certain way. Like you thinking I should be able to do everything, right? But
Right.
little things like growing up in Flatbush, where I was watching people play basketball in the street in front of my building, but I wasn't allowed to play. I'm sitting here
Mhm.
like, yo, like I just want to play basketball, Dad. And they're like, no, you don't play in the street. I'll take you to the park and you could go
Mm.
and play basketball there. And I'm sitting here like, what's the difference? Like, it's basketball. Like, why can't I play in the street? Or the friends that would go to other people's houses over the weekend, and everybody got to come to my house. I can't go to their house, right? Like,
What's wrong?
like there's no sleepovers for
No
me,
sleepover. No sleepover. Okay.
no
None.
sleepovers. So I grew up with a lot of what I looked at as restrictions.
Mm.
Now, as a parent, you start to think of it as protections. But
Mhm.
again, when you don't, as a kid, you don't necessarily think of purpose. So I'm not thinking that you're protecting my promise. You're protecting my purpose. I'm thinking you're preventing me from living.
Mm.
Right. And so that's how a lot of my growing up felt like. It was just like, yo, I can't do this. I can't do that. I remembered the can'ts more than what I could do.
Mm.
So that came up in therapy and just like trying to, and I think it's affected me in today's day and age because I'm now like anti-restriction, like almost to a fault. Where it's like, hey, here's the 3 things you should follow. And I'm like, I ain't doing the 3 things. What are you talking about? I ain't doing that. What you talking about? Like, Geo, go and knock on this door. Well, I gotta go knock on that door. I could just go through the window. Right. So like almost to a point where you're like so rebellious to a fault, but now it's almost like now you're not being intentional even in that regard because of the fact that you didn't understand the purpose behind the restrictions you had. And I think that's the biggest part. And I know this is going off on a tangent, but uh,
No, I love this.
that's the part where I think it's so important to, when you're doing something intentionally, to tell people you're doing it versus assuming that they know, because the understanding makes the going through part easier. When
Mm.
I don't know and you don't tell me your intentions, I then fill in the blanks myself and I might be wrong. Right? So I just think, oh, you're a Haitian parent, you strict. Like that's what I think. I don't think that you
Matter.
protecting me so that I don't get the wrong people, because I've seen a lot of people in my neighborhood who are playing basketball that that when I didn't see them for 10 years, and when they came back, they were in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It
Mm-hmm.
may be as innocent as going and playing basketball in front of a building, but you also got to understand that when you have purpose, just a little blemish can take that purpose and take it away.
That's
And
good.
so I didn't understand that in that moment, but I'm truly grateful looking back, which is a lot of times, like you just said with Sankofa, like looking back, you're like, oh, wow. You didn't like wake up in the morning and say, you're not going to have a life. You were like,
Mhm.
I'm going to ensure that you live, um,
Yeah.
because I created these boundaries to make
Yeah.
sure that happened.
Yeah. I think for me, I love what you said about, you were protecting my promise. And that is when we think about, God's protection, it's always more than often it comes in the form of rejection.
Hmm.
And as a motivational speaker, and we'll get into that, how have you dealt with those moments? Not talking particularly about childhood, but in creative entrepreneurship, as if you can think back to your first public speaking engagements or first couple of speaking engagements and trying to get that up and running, and then trying to establish yourself as a coach. How did you maneuver through those shifts and dips
Yeah.
in building your business?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting the beginning, because the beginning part of it, um, you start off and you think of the world of what's about to happen, right? So I'm gonna be a motivational speaker. I'm inspired. I've seen the Les Browns of the world and do amazing things, and so I'm like, this is where I'm going. And I think that that's where like the elevator goes straight to the penthouse, like from the
Mhm.
minute I get in, right? And when and and it don't. It literally like the first thing it does is it gets stuck first. It doesn't even move. Um, so when I first started doing motivational speaking, the challenge of it, and actually my first speech was like horrible. Like literally the first thing I did when I went to a speech, I was like, I quit. This is not my calling. There's no way this could be it. I was in the middle of a speech, and students were taking selfies of themselves in the middle of the speech. Um, they were talking about a lot of sexual innuendos about things in the middle of the speech. And I'm like, yo, I'm here as a guest. Like, I'm not even getting paid for this. I don't need this. And, in full transparency, like, I got so desperate and annoyed by what happened that I literally said something that probably a motivational speaker, if there was like a handbook on what not to say, I said it. Which was, I literally told the kid, I said, you know what, man, you're gonna be the kid who's gonna be begging for change,
Ooh,
and I'm gonna see you, and I'm not giving you anything, and I'm gonna
ooh,
remember this moment.
that flatbush came out.
Yeah, it came out. It came out. I literally said to myself, "I'm glad no one recorded it." Like, it was so desperate at that
You heard it
moment that I
here
was just so frustrated. I'm like, yo, you are going to be a beggar. That's what you're going to be when you grow up. Um,
first. That is hilarious.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And then I went to my favorite spot. Whenever I had like a bad speech, there was always like a place I would go to. I would eat my way to happiness,
Mm,
right? So there was a place called Cheeseburger back in the days, and the waiter was always nice to me and always knew what I wanted. So I was like, I'm going over here because this speech was horrible. And I went there, had my food, and I really had a moment where I had to ask myself, if this is the next 10 speeches, are you doing the 11th one?
mm,
Right, like it, like, because we all want the promise, but and we all want the blessing, right? And I think this is what I think about when God calls something. We want the blessing, but we don't realize it's a coin, and on the
mhm,
other side of that coin is a burden or
mhm.
something you didn't want. And so
Yeah.
the question becomes no longer what is it that you want, is what are you willing to go through? And
Mm,
so am I willing to go through 10 more selfies, 10 more audiences that don't care to listen to me, 10 more schools that says we don't have a budget, but can you please come? Our kids need it. Like, how long are you willing to go through that? Really determines whether you are answering the call or not. And I decided to do that, and because I felt like I wanted to provide something that I wasn't given, right? I never had like a person who was a peer who was, a step ahead of me in life to tell me, hey, here's what this step is that you're about to embark on. And I felt like that would have been so valuable for me to have that. And so because of that, and because I believe it was my purpose, and it was confirmed in other places as well. Like, you had the 10 kids who took a picture But then you had the one kid who came in the corner and said, you know what, like I really felt seen by what you said today. And I think
Mm,
it's those moments where we normally listen to the 10 that said we sucked, and the one that says I needed it, you forget that part because 10 is more than one. But
yeah.
sometimes you need that one to keep you going. And sometimes that one gets me going for the next 10 that I didn't have anybody say anything. And God works in that way where he will give you something, right? Like I think sometimes we think, hey, well, blind faith, but I don't believe God is a God who makes me do things that are delusional. Yes, he's gonna have me, I gotta trust him, I have to have faith.
Are you sure about that?
You're right. Like, but he's not like he don't got you out here looking foolish. Like he has receipts, and he will make you a receipt as well.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
don't
that's
look
good.
foolish. So I think when you said the journey and the beginning part of it, I just think that I wanted to say that because I think too many people, the start of it makes them leave the journey and let them put the call on hold, right? And you don't want to call and be putting God on call waiting or yeah, I'm gonna just let me hold on a second. Let me put you on hold real quick and let me address this other thing. And I just don't want anybody to be discouraged about the fact that it didn't start as well as you thought it would, right? And I would almost argue if it did, you would probably stay for the wrong reasons.
That's good. That's good. I love that. I love that you have to build up the tough skin.
Hmm.
Um, it's not. It's not a platform. It's purpose.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
right?
Everybody wants the platform. I'm glad that you brought that part. Like,
Yeah, everyone wants the platform, but you have to have the pain that comes with the purpose. Like you have to build that up.
that's so good. I think platform equals praise.
Mm,
Purpose is typically there's a pain, and it's not
mhm.
only pain that you go through in fulfilling the purpose, but oftentimes there's a pain that you feel more than, and it's almost like you can't even describe it. Like even if someone, I actually started becoming a motivational speaker because I was watching CNN one day, and there was a gentleman named Carl who
Mm.
was 7 or 8 years old at the time, and he committed suicide.
Oh,
And when I was watching it, I started crying. And the way I was crying, you would thought it was my brother, right? Like, you don't know this kid. Why are you crying profusely because of this? And I started to think about, like, who didn't tell Carl this horror movie or this horror episode, it ends.
it ends.
There's a
Yeah.
new season, right? Like, and not saying it but saying it in a way where the 7-year-old Carl could understand it, right? Like like Carl, like I'm telling you right now, 14, you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, wow, all of this I would have missed, and so I was just heartbroken, and so that led me to motivational speaking. Was like, my calling is to make sure they know, right? I can't promise that they won't do something still, but I can't say that my responsibility was to make sure that they knew tomorrow gets better.
Mm.
Not necessarily the day after today, but some tomorrow is going to be better than the day you're facing. And so that's really where the calling came from. I would never say that I grew up wanting to be a motivational speaker or to write a book. I hated writing. I hated reading. I hated talking in front of people because my first language was Creole, so people made fun of me with my fake
Really?
accent. Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know that.
You would never know because I don't ever speak it, right? Like, I never speak it, but
No.
yeah,
So
that was my first language.
walk us through that. Walk us through that. How does a motivational speaker and now author um, go through that? And not and hating to write and all that stuff. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, the speaking part of it was my accent was so thick because of the fact that I knew Creole first
Were you
that
born in
basically, no, I was born here, but I guess my parents just must have spoken a lot of Creole in the house. I don't know what happened.
Gotcha.
So when I was in school, like little words like the sounded weird when I said it. So people make fun of you. Like you're like, yo, haha, you can't look, you said duh. Like it's like you to a point where you're like, yo, it's better if I just keep my mouth shut. Because you can't
Mm,
laugh at me if I don't say nothing. So I was never like wanting to be talkative. Like that's why I like math. It was like numbers. I could say numbers correctly. I could look like a smart kid. But English, social studies, anything where you had to use words to express yourself was a challenge for me. And then you got reading, where it's like, now I got to show comprehension. I'm like, I hate this too. Because it was like I had to speak. Like you need to talk and show that you understand what you just read. So it was like something for me where I was like, I'm not interested in this. Like this thing sucks. I was the kid that went to Spark Notes in high school. I never read a book. This is something that's interesting. I never read an actual book until like I was 21 years old. Like I never read a book from cover to cover. I got away with it by reading all the summaries online and made it seem like I read it, right? But I never read a book. And it comes to a point in time where all the things that you said you would never, ever, ever do, something happens in your life. You get an epiphany, you get exposure to something that gets you to see things in a completely different way. And so one of my mentors, he had expressed to me that, Geo, very successful people have larger libraries than their televisions, right? Like he was telling me, like you got to read, like books is going to be the key. And so because I saw, and because of proximity, I saw his life. I saw he was a millionaire. I saw he was the neighbor. His neighbor was the owner of JetBlue and all these different things. Because I saw that, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, you mean you don't watch TV like that? Like he watches TV, but it wasn't to the point where you like, you know the script better than Shonda Rhimes for
Right.
Scandal. Like that's
There
how
was no
well.
such thing as binge watching in his
No,
household.
no, no, no way. Binge. There was no such thing. That word didn't exist. It was just immersing himself in
Mm,
knowledge and application of that knowledge and failing and getting real world experiences and all that stuff. And when I saw that, I started to change my perspective about reading. And then when I started reading more, I started to see the power of this information, and then I started to realize the people that I wanted to help the most, they were just like me. They will never read the books.
mm,
So then what I did was I said, let me read it, and then I'll repeat what I read in my speeches so they can get the information, because I can convey it in a way that they would understand it without opening the book, because there's just some kind of resistance to opening the book. So I said, well, you're open to listening to me, so let me give you this knowledge in a different format through spoken word. But that pain of someone like that Carl story I was telling you about, that's what got me over the hump. Where it's like, I don't care if you laugh at me, I still mess up words. There's times I say stuff in the speech where I'm trying to say the word and I'm struggling to it, and then somebody says it, and I said, "Thank you for saving me. You saw me struggling, didn't you?" Right? There's words I just don't know how to say it, but I don't let that stop me from reaching out. And I think that actually makes me more connected to the people, because they're like, wow, like I saw you struggle in your speech. I saw you scratch your head. I saw you go and put your finger on your nose or whatever. You're human. And that creates a connection that I thought, I wouldn't have, or that was the thing that you were supposed to hide. And that's the exact thing God uses to go and make that connection even stronger.
yeah, that's so good. I this is I am like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm in one of your sessions right now because I'm getting so inspired. I'm getting so motivated. I think it sounds like, in just hearing you speak about motivational speaking and just living this purpose driven life, it really sounds like this is your surface. This is the legacy that you're leaving behind. And when we think about the boys like Carl, who don't really have people in their communities, don't have access the way that you have access, right?
Yeah.
That you've placed yourself in the companies of millionaires and stuff like that, to be able to sit at the feet of those millionaires and then translate what you've learned from them to your audiences that may not be able to have that access to sit in the company of millionaires. You're definitely closing that gap, right?
Hmm.
That gap where folks can still be motivated. Folks in our communities, particularly, could be motivated and inspired to be all that they can be at that young age, and to really have what you didn't have. And you're really setting the foundation for them early. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, I, I I would love to. I think when I met you, we met at our church, our former church's young adult community.
Yep.
Shout out to everyone who's listening. Movement, hey transitions, hey BT and all that stuff. And when I met you, I also met a darling woman by the name of Geo Derice.
Yep. Yep.
And you guys were known in our community as, Barack and Michelle Obama.
Yeah, you gave us that title, but I took it though. I was like, I own it. I'm like, yo, Gabe, you heard what Fatima said.
And so, do you feel like, and now that you're a husband and a father, and we'll get into fatherhood, but how has the journey been being a husband? And did you feel like you were equipped to be a husband when you first got married? And what did the journey to where you're at now, what did it look like? What were some things that you wish you would have known before signing those papers?
Yeah. Equipped. I feel like that the challenge with the word equipped is I feel like there's no bar for it, right? Like there's no prerequisite. So it's tough to say, well, did I feel equipped to become a husband? I think instead of equipped, I use the word that was there the desire for it. Right. And I think I had the desire to want to be, I don't know where this came from. I just never was the type of person who liked having more than one person I was responsible for. Right? Like,
give a round of applause for that.
I've never been that guy. Like I find it very hard to keep up with the one that I have to keep up with to say I got more than one to keep up with. I'm like, I don't know what y'all do. But it's always been like, just pour everything you have into this one person. And I've always been wired that way. It's all I saw too. Like my dad, I didn't see womanizing or whatever, or multiple partners type of stuff growing up. But in terms of like the husband part and how that challenge and where that goes, I think again it goes back to what I was saying before about any type of calling, right? Like I remember before we got married, this was a few weeks before I proposed, where Marsha told me, "You don't know how to love me." I'm like, what? What do you call the last 3 years? Like, right? And for her to say that, and again, it goes back to that speech part where, am I willing to move forward, right? So the question at that moment becomes, are you humble enough to ask her to tell you how? Or are you too prideful and you're like, well, if the love I'm giving you, you said it's not the way you want it, then take it or leave it, right? So at that moment, I had to decide, do I want her more than the feeling of am I the Rico Suave, the person who got it all together? And I think at that moment, it was good for me, for her to be that open and honest, and also an opportunity and invitation for me to go and check myself to say, well, do you really want her no matter what? And willing to be humbled and learn about that process or not? And I think at that moment, I was like, yeah, I do. Like I'm okay because I understand the fullness of what we're going through. So if this is just an episode of, okay, well, I don't know. I made it my business to go and figure it out. And I've always joked around with Marsha and told her that I may never have a master's degree. I may never have a doctorate, but I got many PhDs in marshology, right? Like for me, like there's no class that I ain't gonna fail that had your name in it, right? So that was my purpose. That was something I thought about, took it as a challenge. And still, like I could guess what she's gonna do before she does it. Like I'm on that level. And again, I think in order for you to be a thriving husband or to go towards that, that's the level you have to have. That's the expectation you have to have, is understanding your wife or your partner at that level, and just creating a space where y'all could go and grow and be okay with if you fell short, to let the person tell you, how do I go and get to the next level? I know I got the next 80, 90 years with her. So I'm okay if I stumble every now and then and don't have the correct answer. I'm going to take the test again. Like, I ain't no other tests. right? Like, so they're like, hey, I'm
Okay,
not changing.
okay.
I'm not changing professions. Like this is it. So because of that understanding, and then it's easy for me to be okay with. Dang, you said I didn't do this. All right, I just gotta go figure it out. Let me go back to the drawing board. Like that idea. But I think that's the reason why I'm so big on like really just knowing who you are, knowing who you with, really understand their dreams, their aspirations, even understanding their past. When you said go back,
Mm-hmm.
understanding my wife's past helps me to understand how to deal with her in the future,
Yeah.
how to
Have you
protect her in the
guys?
future, and all that
Did you
stuff.
guys go through couples counseling, or do you guys
Yeah,
have couples
we
meet?
did do premarital. Um, it was helpful, but I felt like it was just a scratch of the surface. Like it wasn't like as in depth. And I could be honest in saying that it's so important to have counsel be in alignment, because
Yeah,
I felt like in the middle of premarital, the person who was leading me in premarital, I felt conflict in between the way they were talking to me and trying to teach me. So it
gotcha.
created a wall for me. And I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but what happens with me when it comes to that stuff is it's hard for me to follow someone that I don't admire.
Mm.
So the
Ooh,
minute you start to challenge, yeah, like I can't, like, so a lot of people would say something like, Geo, why you never went to a men's ministry meeting? I don't see anyone that I want to copy. I'm just being honest. Like, like I just didn't see it. Like, because you're telling me give up a Saturday morning. I'm like, for what? Like, I don't see. I'm not even. This is the part where it's like jealousy is often a negative thing. I think if it's inspiring, right? I want to be inspired by your relationship. Borderline jealousy where I'm like, yo, dang, man, I want that relationship, right? Like something like that. I didn't see that. So I didn't go for it. I was like, I'm not going. But I think I felt triggered because I was being challenged on my journey and the pace of it
Mm.
without any biblical reasoning as to why you're telling me to hurry up, right?
Mm.
And not taking into account, don't give people advice and not know their whole story, right? So I
Mm.
think sometimes people go and say, yo, this is what you should do. And I'm like, you didn't even get past the table of contents about my life. And you're already telling me how the whole book's supposed to go. So, and then they go and project their life story. Hey, well, this is how I did it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have a dad that paid for my wedding and all this stuff for you to go and flex and tell me as if you did it. Like you made it seem like you came up with everything. The person paid for everything, and you telling me to hurry up. I'm like, you hurried up because you didn't have to do it. Like,
I think if we could get married today if you don't have to pay
right.
for a wedding. Right.
Yeah, So I think that when I think of the premarital stuff, it's like so important, like to counsel looks in different packages, and I think sometimes we can even talk about this when it comes to therapy. Is like we expect the person to look a certain way, and then it's like, okay, I know that they understand me, and I'm like, no, that's not necessarily true. Y'all could
Yeah.
be in the same identity. We're both Christians, but
Right.
every Christian is flawed. So
Right.
you're gonna tell me something, give me counsel based on your past, and that may not be my past, or and stuff
Right.
like that. So,
So
but
where have
yeah,
you gotten your, outside of, strengthening your relationship with Marsha and having those conversations, intimate conversations, where have you gotten your, your wise counsel or your, insight to really strengthen your marriage from?
oh, that's a good question. Thank you for asking it, man. So I got a lot of those business. It was through my business coaches.
Mm.
My business coaches were the ones who really told me, "Here you go, bud." My business coaches were the ones who really taught me how to go and move in marriage. And they were telling me, Geo, the reality of what I want you to understand in your journey, they would say something like, here's a perfect example of what they told me that I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought of this. So I did a speech one time in Washington State. We did like a mini tour, and I went with my business coach at the time. And he was telling me, Geo, on the ride back to the airport, and we were about to go home. This is the first time I ever got paid to speak in another state. Like it was like I was on cloud nine. And he said, Geo, I know the temptation is going to be once you get home to tell Marsha all about this amazingness that you just experienced. And I would advise you, as a husband, don't do that, because what you are saying ultimately at a time when you left her for a few days, you're
Mhm.
telling her the most important thing is what just happened. And that's the wrong message. He said, tell her the next day. Wait for her to ask a question. But by no means do you go and get off the plane, go home and say, babe, you won't believe what happened in Washington. And so he told me that, and he said, go take her out, but don't say nothing about the speech. And I'm like, you asking for a lot. Like, because this joint was
I can't contain myself. Are you
I
kidding
said,
me?
I said, I can't believe this. He said, Gio, tell it to me, but hold back. So we went out to eat that day. I never said nothing about the speech or nothing. But what he said to me was like, you need to remind your wife that she's number one. There's no
Mm,
job, there's no whatever. Like, she's number one. You have to do that. And I was like, man, that's so powerful. Like, those things. And I also had my business coaches like threatened me. Like they would tell Marsha they would hold me accountable. Like they were like I remember one of my business coaches, good friend, I call him Uncle Paul. Uncle Paul would say to me, he would go to Marsha, he would say, if Gio ever does something wrong, you know my number. Right. And I'm sitting here like, yo, what the heck? Like, but it was those type of things where I felt like I got my counsel from I saw how they treated their wives. I saw how they made sure that those things that you're chasing in life, those goals, those achievements, those things are in support of your wife. Helped you do that, right? And so they helped me to understand the sacrifices that a wife makes to allow you to do the things that you do. And I've spoken about this on a different podcast about, like, I do what I do because Marsha gives me the platform to do it, right? She gives me the space to do it. She lets me mess up. I don't feel like there's a timer where she's like, hey, 5 more minutes and then 5 more months. And then, like, I never felt that pressure. I felt like she believed in my purpose, sometimes even more than I did. There was times where I was tempted to take 9 to 5 jobs. I'm like, babe, it's a 9 to 5 job. It's in alignment. It's in the same category of what I'm already doing. I don't have to even go in person. I said all of these things, and I said, and it's paid and vacation and this. And I remember Marsha said to me, I don't want that version of you because that's not who you were supposed to be.
oh,
And I said, but we struggling financially. Like this is gonna get us money and da 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 da. And she said, but you won't be the same person. All those circumstances will be addressed, but the most important piece of this puzzle is the person. And she said, the person changing, I'm not willing to do that. So the circumstances can stay, but the person that I see here, I don't want that to change. And I was like, oh my gosh. That was that moment when I looked at God. I said, so she's pretty and she's perfect for me. Oh snap. Like, I was like, it was
you big
beyond.
guy.
I said, yeah, oh my God, you be knowing. I didn't know this. And that's why I was like, okay, like the beauty, the looks, they not that they fade, but they
Because
change,
she's
right? Like
okay.
they do a little shift. She's gracefully aging. She ain't old, but I'm just saying, like, she looks the same as I felt like I saw 11 years ago.
She definitely
But
does. Micah
the
is here to prove it.
yeah, don't everybody say that. You don't look like me. But, but like the person she's becoming, the person she's allowed me to grow into, like that's the most exciting part. And the most exciting part about that is I'm not done growing. We still not done growing. So like the next chapter is full of unknowns, but it's like that's what makes it interesting. It's like I don't
Yeah,
know what we're gonna do next.
it sounds what I'm hearing is just like, what she said, because I mean, we can talk about gender roles all day and all this stuff like that. And I mean, even you right now, and what, you're in your home and holding Micah, and he's ready for his nap. And I know Marsha is doing her thing in the education system, but I think, and this is the reason why I loved seeing you guys together in community, and why I would always call you guys Barack and Michelle, because it sounds very much so like Barack and Michelle Obama's journey, in that you see the man, you see the platform, you see the brand, you see Geo speaks, but you don't see Marsha speaking life into Geo, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the safety that Marsha provides you to really grow, but really walk out your purpose. And I think that we're in the era of, and I love it. I love the season that we're in right now as women, where we're reclaiming our femininity. We are entering into the soft life. I am a happy member of the soft life. Okay. And oftentimes it's this, but men are also entering their soft life era too, and I'm
Right.
here for it.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and they are saying, and this stylist was sharing that men are actually investing into their personal style. They're investing into their maintenance routine and all this stuff like that. So I am totally here for it, and I'm here for the women that allow the men to be their very best selves as well. Definitely here for that. Um, I went on a tangent. I was just so excited about that. So excited about that, but oh, that's my point. Okay, so 7 years, 7 years. You are waiting for the promise, waiting
Mm-hmm.
to have this beautiful baby boy that you have now,
Yep.
um, and it has been quite a journey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to tell me a little bit more, if you can, and what you can share a little bit about that journey. I attended your baby shower. You gave a speech, and it was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, right? And could you let us in, give us a peek into what that experience was like for you as a man, as a husband, not only supporting Marsha through this journey, but also for you. What did this journey through infertility to now conceiving and now being a father, holding your promise in your hand, like literally right now?
Yeah. That's what's it's to me. It's just surreal. Like I think that I've been grateful. There's no bad days because I'm reminded of the promise, right? Like like you said, I could hold him, and but like I sometimes wake him up myself. I'm like,
I
I didn't
see
see the
the
smile. I
Insta
didn't see the
story.
smile. I literally woke him up right before we started recording. But that journey was tough. Like to I had advice when I was younger, when we just started our marriage, where my friends shared with me, don't rush to have kids. Be fully immersed in you and Marsha so that y'all could have that foundation. And I thought it was great advice. And then when we started to go and try to get kids, I thought that you just do what baby making stuff happens and the kid's just gonna pop out. And then when that didn't happen, I was like, yo, what's going on? Like this is supposed to be like one plus one equals two. Like it's just not supposed to be. It's supposed to be just whoop. There you go. And then that didn't happen. And then obviously over time you start to go and say, okay, well now I gotta kind of look underneath the hood of the car to see like what's causing this thing to not work. And in doing that, it was tough because it was in those moments that I felt like shortcomings because you go to a doctor, you go to a fertility doctor, and they're like, your sperm count is too low, or they tell you like the numbers like it's almost like non-existent. Like, and then you start to say that, I'm like, how is this possible? Like, what are you talking about? And then you start going through the rabbit hole of everything that you did in your life that may have made this happen and all this stuff, and you start to really start to question yourself. You're like, maybe this is not meant for me. This is a mistake. Oh my gosh! Then you start hating on people, right? When you see other people with kids, and you go to every baby shower in the world, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, here we go, another baby shower, where you see other people's promise, and then you start to question whether yours is going to come true. And those became hard. Like, I felt like God was checking my heart to see, like, can you still be happy for somebody else as you wait? And I was like, this is there's a couple baby showers I'm sure I did not go to because I wasn't okay. Right? Like I couldn't. Like I really honestly was hating. Like I didn't like it. I didn't like, oh, this kid, you got a kid? Oh my gosh. How is that possible? You younger than me. You're not responsible. You have not been waiting. Like I came up with all the stories because the feeling was so much to deal with. I had to create a narrative to make it okay. Like I had to like, how do I stomach this? So I make up stuff until like like to cope with the situation. Um, and then we got close when Marsha one day said, "Hey, like in like 10 minutes, we found out she was pregnant and she wasn't pregnant." Right? One day she's like, "Oh, I'm sick, Jimmy babe, my stomach's hurting. I'm going to the NYU Lagoon, whatever." And I'm like, "All right, I'm coming. I'm gonna come. Being husband. Hey, I'm coming up right now. I'm gonna come in right now." And you come in and you like, "Hey, I'm looking for Marsha," and they're like, "Oh, she's in another room," and I'm sitting in the room waiting, and I'm thinking she just got a stomach ache. Like I was like, she just got bad stomach ache. And then you come in the room and you're like, she tells me, "Oh, I was pregnant, but it's not viable." I'm like, hold on. This is not making sense to me. Like, first of all, you're supposed to have a stomach ache. like, you're not supposed to be, and you telling me we're pregnant. So now you're going to the point where you're like, okay, the promise, but the promise never is like it went in the air and didn't land. Like it just evaporated. Like in 10 minutes, you're like, you pregnant and now they're gonna take it out? What are you talking about? Like this is crazy. And at that moment we hadn't done IVF. So I'm like, this is not even possible. They told me the odds was nothing. So now you're telling me naturally this happened. So in that moment when I told you before, like God give you something, I'm like, yo, God, that's not even supposed to happen. Like even so I was even able to praise the thing that wasn't it. I could praise the fact that, yo, God, that you made that happen even without the other stuff. Oh, so that means the promise is still available. Even in the midst of that. But it was challenging. And then IVF was challenging in and of itself. Because the first round, it didn't work. We're like, yo, come on, we did IUI, then we did IVF.
Now,
And
explain to me, what does that process look like through IVF? Like,
yeah,
and
so,
also,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, that process look like.
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously found a fertility place, and they told us the process of, hey, you got to get. So for number one, I had to get my sperm stored, like the few that actually worked. They're like, we got to save these, right? Like, we got to save these. So I had that happen, and then they had to do like get the eggs, and we had to do injections. Where I was injecting Marsha with whatever the medication was, which was, I'm like, yo, I can't. I'm okay with needles, but for me to do it to her, and I remember one time I gave her the injection, and it was the one time blood came out, and it hurt her that moment. She's like, ah, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. I'm hurting you, like right? Because it's tough because you see that in that moment you feel like, dang, like you're really seeing all the mental stuff that
Mm,
has to happen, and it's all happening to her. Like I'm not getting injected, I'm
wow.
not dealing with the hormones and all the different things. So to see that, it was definitely challenging for sure. And then for it to not work, the first time around, and we thought again, I'm like the same mentality I had with, hey, you have sex, you got a baby. I'm like, oh, you do this, you got the timing correct, they had the windows, it's gonna happen. And then they're like, yeah, this round didn't work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I thought I was at the finish line, and you telling me go back and to the start of the race. Uh,
Mm,
that was tough. But again, like I believe that we were supposed to be parents, so we took a month off just to like decompress, and then we said, all right, let's get back on the horse again. And then the second time around, I think the clinic, I was actually on my way to a speech in Buffalo, and the clinic called Marsha over and over again. Like when somebody call you the first time and then you don't pick up and they call right again the next time.
like they're doing a
So yeah, you're like, yo, what's going on? Like, why are you calling me 5 times in a row? So they kept calling her. So she finally picked up the phone, and they told her the person sounded super excited. Like she was like, oh my gosh, like, blah, 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 blah. Like I gotta talk to you. And I'm like, there's no way they're gonna call you that much to tell you bad news. Like, right? So I'm like, yo, you must be telling me something good. So she called them. I told her, yo, call me on three-way. Like I gotta hear it firsthand too. And then when she told me, I was like Tom Cruise on Oprah's couch, jumping on the bed, like going crazy. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Right? This is so exciting. Like I was jumping up and down. I almost missed my flight. Because I was so excited. And it sucked too because, and again, this is where it comes like when things happen, they don't always happen perfectly. You're thinking,
Mhm.
I'm getting the news that we've been waiting for, and I have to go. Like, I'm not even going to be home when she comes home for us to really celebrate it because I got to go to Buffalo to do my calling, right? Like, to go do a speech. Um, but it was still like just so beautiful. And I was walking around in the airport, nobody could tell me nothing. Yeah,
Nothing,
I was in
child.
the clouds. I was in the clouds. I'm like sitting over here, walking past terminals. I'm like, I'm not even taking the escalator. You know that escalator thing where people go on it so they could go faster. I said, I'm
Yeah.
just taking. I'm going. I'm going to walk.
I'm taking a scenic route. I'm taking
Yeah,
a scenic route.
I'm looking. I'm like, I don't need this help. I'm good.
So, so I mean, you talked briefly about you going to the hospital with her and you going to those doctor's visits. Was there any, and you shared, and thank you for sharing that, this, the infertility issue was really on, you don't really hear that often. You always hear that it's always on like the woman and her end. Um,
Yeah,
what supports or what support did the healthcare system provide you in navigating through the feelings, the emotions of that? I know that you said that you started therapy 2 years ago, and we'll talk about that. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that there was a lot running through your mind. And while there may have been a lot running through your mind, Marsha had to deal with the injections and stuff like that. So how did you navigate through that experience emotionally as Geo the husband, but also Geo the man?
yeah. I was just too blinded. To me, there was no support. To be honest with you, like there's no like resources for that kind of stuff. Like I don't see, you don't. I don't go in my feed and see this type of stuff communicated or talked about a lot. So especially like you said, from the man's perspective, I actually like distanced myself from a friend of mine one time because jokingly he said the word shooting blanks, and I was like offended, right? Like, and again, when I hear it, it's like there's an insensitivity there, or you're not aware of it because that's exact. You're describing a situation that I have no control over, that I feel insecure about, that I feel like
Mm,
I'm not holding up my end, and so for months it was like just very like, all right, we're gonna be friends, but I'm gonna be friends from over here though. Like
mhm.
like because of that one statement, and so it was tough for me, to deal with that reality because then like you thinking it's me, it's not. She got eggs, like So it was definitely a challenge to figure out how to navigate that. Honestly, outside of God, I can't say there was a resource per se. I mean, my pastor was very helpful in terms of just always saying he was praying for me, him and his wife. Shout out to Pastor Brandon and First Lady Ty at Epiphany Church. But like they were very, I felt like like when you vulnerable and you feel like the person gave you somewhere, like almost like sit in my lap, almost in a sense, like it's okay. I
Yeah.
felt that. Like I didn't feel judged or I didn't feel ridiculed. I felt like we believe this is going to happen for you and you have an emotional safe space to express your frustrations as you feel like. And I think that was something that was never questioned by them. And so we was definitely grateful for that. And our church community was very supportive and praying for us and reminding us over and over again, almost to overkill. We're praying for that. We're praying for that. We're praying for that. And I think sometimes in those moments, and I would say there were definitely moments in that season where I didn't have the prayer. So if somebody else didn't pray it for me, it wasn't prayed.
Mhm. You didn't
So
have it in.
yeah, I didn't have it. Like I'm like I don't have the going. I don't know what to say. I can't get quiet. Like I just need someone to intercede.
Mhm.
And I was grateful that they did that. For sure in that process. But again, the resources are limited for men. And that's why when people say like, "Are you willing to share or talk about this whole journey?" Marsha and I, we've said this from day one. This was never our story to keep.
Ooh, that's
It was
good.
always we started to pivot our mindset to say God wants to tell a story through us, and just like the many people he's told stories through in the Bible, the first few chapters are Job-like. They're right, and so we were like, "Dang, no one acts to be Job, but I do want the end of the book.
Yeah.
I want double blessings."
Job doubled up, okay? Job doubled up. Listen, I want Job. I want that Job anointing, okay?
Yeah, no, it was important.
Job anointing,
Mhm.
yeah,
What is
yeah.
that purpose thing you said earlier? Like, once we started to realize that the time was purpose driven, like God wanted it to go this way, right? Once we understood that, it made the journey more easier to go through. Because then we were like, at some point he's gonna get the praise. At some point he's gonna get the glory, right? So we were just waiting for the next part of the story to be written. Um, and so to see Micah and to see the smiles and all the things that he brings to us and see the fullness of God's blessing, and to remind people that time, God don't wear watches. I tell that to people all the time. Like he don't have an expiration clock. Just really stay hold to it, and again understand that the waiting period is him showing off. Like he got to show you. Like it's the same thing with Lazarus was dead. He could have came and got Lazarus before. You're like, nah, I just gotta show y'all. Y'all know I could turn blind people and make them see and turn water to wine, but y'all don't know I got that resurrecting power. Y'all don't know that I do death to life.
Listen,
Let me show it to you.
I'm not a runner, but don't test me, okay?
It's
I'm
important.
preaching right now, and it's not even Easter Sunday. Come on.
Listen to me. I'm not missed in the fact that God gave us the story, and it's our responsibility to share it. I can't steal His glory. I gotta let it shine, expose it. And again, like I'm reminded every day. I would be lying to you if I said that every day as a dad is easy.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about gender roles. I'm a stay-at-home dad for the last 10 months. I didn't think I know I said I would do it. I didn't think it was gonna be this though. Like, right? It was challenging because you're talking about, okay, I'm not doing motivational speaking, so I'm not traveling to speak anywhere, right? So that's shut off. The other part of it is I had friends who had wives who had postpartum. So my mindset was to do everything in my power to make sure Marsha doesn't have postpartum depression. So that became my focal point, my focus, my energy. But what I didn't realize is that postpartum is not gender specific. So when I said I'm going to take it away from her, I was under the impression I can get it. The same way men think they can't get breast cancer, but the percentages are lower, but you can get it. I didn't think I could get postpartum, so I'm like, yo, I'm just gonna make sure Marsha don't have it, and then I had it. Like there's moments I've sat down and I've in lack of sleep and depression, and I've had moments where I've said like, you know what, if a bus hit me, I'll be fine, right? Like I've had suicidal thoughts, ideations through postpartum, like the postpartum stuff, because again, I was blinded. I didn't think I needed to have the defense to protect myself from it. I just thought only Marsha could get it, so I could take it. Like I can make sure she don't have it and be fine, and realize now, like you need to protect yourself too. And I went back to one of those mentors, the same ones who gave me counsel when it came to being a husband. I went and picked up the phone and said, "Yo, he was excited for me and was had tears in his eyes when Micah was born. And he was checking on me and said, "Yo, how you doing?" I said, "Not good, bro. Like honestly, Unc, I'm not feeling good right now. I'm going through it." And he said, "Jill, let me talk to you." And he gave me three pieces of advice, which I'm going to read right now to you. It's on my wall. I never removed it after that day. I literally call them Paulisms. Like it should be the book of Pauls. He said something to me. He said, number one, in your parenting, I want you to realize in this season, there's no points for the style of how you do it. Right? So you don't gotta look great, you don't gotta be beautiful about it. You ain't gotta go and say, "Hey, everything is looking great." As long as it gets done. Micah's alive, he ain't sick, Marsha's good, you still here, fine. Like there's no, oh well, did you hit a perfect landing when you did this? Like, no. He said there's no style points. So that was important to me to hear. Then he said the second thing he told me was the thing you worried about. I'm just reading it. He said the thing you're worried about, you will remember it in the future as a non-issue. So apply that thinking currently. So whatever you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not speaking. Oh my gosh, that's on hold. Whatever. In the future, you're gonna look at them like, man, that's what I was talking about. Whatever. Nah. So he said, just apply that thinking in the
Yeah.
moment. But this was the one that was the most profound thing he said that I say for last. And I've been sharing this with other husbands who are fathers because of how impactful it was for me to hear it. So he said to me, and I'm normally not the sharer. Like I don't go to other husbands telling them stuff per se. But this one was too good to keep. So I was like, I've been telling everybody who come around me. He said, the worst thing you can do to your son is put unnecessary pressure on his father. Right? And I'm listening to this, and this would be Paul to do this. It it needed to be said, but it needed to be said with the exact words of what he said. Because if he said Micah's name or he said Geo's name, I would have never seen the story. But when he said the worst thing you could do to your son is put unnecessary pressure on his father, to me, that was like, it allowed me to see it and say, that's not nice to do that to anybody. But then I was able to pause for a moment and say, but I've been doing that to myself.
Yeah.
And it really put a smile on my face to be able to go do that. And then I had a friend of mine named Hugh who also told me also like, yeah, Hugh was helpful. One time I went, and this is where you got to do what God tells you to do. One day I was tired. I didn't, and I was driving, and Hugh had a pop up lemonade stand for his daughter, teaching her entrepreneurship and all that stuff, which I firmly believe in as well. So I was like, yo, you know what? I'm tired. I don't even need lemonade. I got type 2 diabetes, so I technically can't drink it anyway. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. I was in the hospital. That's another thing I didn't even talk about. Like that was scary too. But I'll bring that up in a second. So we went out. I said, yo, I just gotta support her. I need her to know. I need her to sell out. I need to go and buy some lemonade, even if I'm not gonna drink it, because I want her to know this thing you're doing is good.
Yeah.
So I went, and by the time I got there, everything had already sold out. Right, so I couldn't even get the thing anyway. But in going, because I felt like that was the right thing to do in my spirit, Hugh started blessing me with how to look at this season, right? And how, like, Gio, don't worry about what you're losing. Think about all the things you're gaining in this season. You're thinking about, oh, I can't do no speeches. Oh my gosh, the income is not the same. He says, but the pouring in that you're getting, he getting 110% dad every day. Like every day, and like now, everybody goes and says that's your favorite, that's your best friend, that's all that stuff. This is stuff he's getting at a young age that typically is not normal, right? Like when you think about a father, you might see it with a daughter, but with the son, it's always like hard. There's not emotion. There's no emotions. Like, you're gonna teach you how to be rough. Ain't no rough. There's no one who kissed Micah more than me. There's no one who blows his stomach more than me. Like, I don't even post videos online of myself anymore. It's literally like, hey, good morning. Here's your sunshine. Like, and
I'm here for it. Because those weeks, oh my goodness.
I can't help it. I'm just like, yo, like this is overjoyed. So he was just telling me, like, really just enjoy it because it's not going to always be like that, and or you might have to shift or change, and then you're gonna say, I wish I could have. It made it a little easier. Some days are still hard, but just those moments of being able to like have people who I normally would not talk to just share some stuff for me, has made that journey just a little bit easier to do, in terms of being a dad.
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I had an uh item, not an item, but a to do to really talk about brotherhood, and I love that you just brought it up naturally. Um, another type of relationship that you kept bringing up, and I kind of want you to go deeper about, is this mentoring relationship. Your business coaches
Yeah,
have really, really been basically your board of directors and people who
well
supported you
said.
through every life journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was listening to this live stream the other day about um, someone's mentoring philosophy, and it sounded really bogus to me.
Okay.
Um, but what because it sounded more like an unpaid internship
Okay.
as opposed to because when I think of mentoring, I think of someone who is an expert or someone who has the capacity and the availability to just listen to a mentee and pour into that mentee, right?
Hmm.
Because you, as the mentor, you have been poured into in a particular subject or in just life in general, or just you want to extend that helping hand. But this particular gentleman was talking about, you know, I so into them. I always ask them, call them 2 to 3 times a week, ask them what they need from me, whether financially or whatever. And also don't ask them too many questions, don't waste their time and all this stuff like that. And I'm like, what? And then he's saying like, yeah, I don't ever leave their presence without giving sewing into them financially and all the stuff like this. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like an unpaid internship. This doesn't mentorship to me. And I think people get that confused. Like when you're a mentor, you're pouring, in my opinion, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm willing to be corrected. You are pouring out what you've been giving,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so tell me more about your mentoring relationships. What are some do's and don'ts in your opinion?
Yeah. I think that mentorship is so important, and it's interesting you said about the whole. I never leave the presence of them without giving them some type of financial seed or sowing a seed, and I think that type of stuff is the very reason why it's so dangerous to share information, because somebody hears that and thinks it's law versus is just your approach, right? Like that's your approach that worked for you, that's good, but it's not the holy grail, it's not a commandment, right? And so I think that that's important for us to also look at that and say, okay, well, that's not the only way to do it. To do that, I will say though, in all the mentorship relationships that I've had, um, they've all been different. They didn't come in the same package. So like my first mentor, when it comes to entrepreneurship, business, and stuff, was a gentleman by the name of Ryan Lee, Jewish guy actually too, and lived up in Connecticut. But our relationship started from just me having a desire to want to learn, and I did buy a product that he created, but it wasn't like that was the reason why we developed a business relationship and then a friendship that we still have to this day. It was more so of when you do have a mentoring relationship, it's you need to understand that the mentor's time is valuable,
That
and
is true.
the best pay you can give them is giving them a testimony because you did something with what they told you, right? So or so there's a desire, a hunger that I had, where even to the point where I couldn't even afford to go to one of his events, I did volunteer for the event. I said, hey, just give me a ticket, I'll be the bus boy, I'll give people water, I'll clean the tables, all this stuff. And I did that. He let me come to the conference, and I did that. And then he gave me money at the end when I was supposed to not get paid. And so I was like, "Oh, really?" He like gave me like $500, and I was like, "$500 to do this?" Like, I'm like, "Whoa, whoa!" I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So we did that, and then later on, I think it's also important for you to believe in yourself because the mentor is buying your belief as well. So
Mm,
when you really are sold out and you're like, yo, I know you know something that could take me to the next level, they will borrow your belief even if they don't have the time. So one day I spoke to him on a Yahoo Messenger back in the days. Yahoo Messenger, people,
that
right?
was so.
So I saw him, and I think it's important for you to shoot your shot when it comes to mentorship. So I saw him on Yahoo Messenger. I already know he's busy, but I saw his name and it said he was live. So I said, yo, let me hit him up. He had a book launch that was coming out. And I said to him, hey, listen, I wish you well with this book launch, whatever, whatever. And he gave me a challenge. And I think when your mentor challenges you, you want to take advantage of it. So he said, Gio, here's what I'll do. If you sell um, 20 copies of my book, I will give you a free mentoring session or coaching session, for example. So I said, say less. Now in my mind, I'm like, what? So now I go online. I'm like, yo, how do I get like the number one search result ranking for his book, right? And so I started doing all the research in the world trying to figure it out. And I found like there was like a hack. This probably don't work today, but there was a hack where it was like, if you create a video that's controversial and put the person's name or whatever the thing you want to search for in the descriptions and the titles and the tags, all that stuff in YouTube, it'll help you rank higher. And then there was like this program that spits it out to all these different video stuff. So I created a video called Ryan Lee's Book Sucks, right? Like that was the name of the video. And it ranked number one. It actually ranked higher than his own listing. But I never said in the video, I never say anything negative. It was just a thing, like a clickbait. So they click on it. I'm like, yo, it don't suck. The book is actually amazing, whatever. So I ended up selling like 4 copies of the book, not the whatever number he told me. But he was like, you taking that kind of initiative was admirable. So he ended up hiring me to work for him full time just off that alone.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I worked with him for years. I think, like no kidding, when I tell you like God has positioned me a certain way for this stuff, it was like the 3rd year that I was working with him, and I went up to Connecticut to go to work. When I got there, he said, we're not working. We're just going to get massages because we just need to relax. And I'm sitting here like, what? And that was the first time I ever got a massage in my life. I never had that happen before. So he exposed me to things I've never seen. And when we were driving back, Fatima, listen, when we was driving back, he literally asked me, my mom and dad, I hope they don't hear this part of the conversation. He said to me, did you go to college? I said, yes. He said, did you finish? I said, yeah, I got a degree and everything. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that. Right? Like, so I'm getting a job working as a marketing director without ever having to submit a resume. My resume was, did you do a video? Did you try to sell my book? That was my job interview. And he saw me take initiative and said, I bet I'm going to do that. Now that opened the door for me to find my other mentor, because while I was working with Ryan, I started getting exposed to different people. People start to see me in alignment with him. And I think the cool thing is not just to get mentorship, is does your mentor provide you an opportunity where you could be seen as the star as well? Right? So he did that. Like the people were like, they were confused. They're like, Geo, I don't know if it's you or him. And it's because he was humble. He didn't feel like he got to take all the glory. Even products he created, he let me go on it and still do some of the stuff so that it almost looks like I was doing it too. So people would thought I had the same success. So I think with the mentorship thing, you want to be careful when you're looking for these opportunities. You want to be wise in looking for what I call the seeds, not the apple. So what that means is many people, when they're looking for opportunity, they want to eat today. So if I gave you a choice of do you want the apple or the seed, you're like, I could eat the apple today. The seed, I gotta wait for it to grow. And I tell people all the time, the seed has many apples. You have to have the delayed gratification part of it to be like, yo, I could wait until the tree grows. So you could have many apples. And I want you to think about it from this perspective. Your purpose wasn't for you to only be fulfilled. So you getting the apple, you eat it. No one else could eat it. But if I have the seed, many people can eat. And so that mentality of, yo, I got to be blessed to be a blessing, you start to move a little bit differently. And so these are the things that when you look for mentorship opportunities, you want it to be skill-based building. Like, are you going to put me in a role where I can take ownership over something? So if they're like, yo, I want you to own social media for me, that's great. You need to feel ownership, not just a tag along. I think that's the most important thing when it comes to mentorship. But again, looking for opportunities and look at their family life as well. Don't look at just the thing that they get glory for. Look for the behind the scenes. My mentors, I saw how they moved as husbands. That's what attracted me to them, not the fact that they were millionaires. What attracted me was the fact that they were still married. Because there's many millionaires who just get divorced. Their kids don't like them, all that stuff. Right. So I wanted to see which person has kids they like them, their wives are still here, all that stuff. And that's what I looked at, was like their personal life. I also want that too, not just the professional one.
That's good. That's good. We gotta give poetry snaps for that one. That is amazing. Because when I tell you, I lost all hope when I saw that bogus lie. Surely, my God has not co-signed this.
Listen, it's a different mentality. I think I know people say you got to pay to play, and I've done that too as well. There's times I've bought my mentors, and then they turn into friends. But at the same time, I don't want that to be like that's what you have to do. Because I even had a mentor, and it was a very brief relationship, but like Kevin Hart's mentor mentored me twice. And again, it goes back to that boldness. I just emailed him one day and I said to him, I just want to interview you. I see the successes Kevin Hart has, and he's attributed a lot of that success to you. I want to talk to you. And I know this, most people want to go and talk directly to Kevin Hart. I'm like, I want to know the genesis, the person who was there when he wasn't him.
So good. That's so
right.
good.
And so I talked to him, and he was like, sure. Like he emailed me like 20 minutes later. Like it was like at 12 o'clock at night. I emailed him. And at 12:20, he said, give me a call or I'll call you tomorrow. And we spoke, and he told me stuff that I felt like changed the way I speak for a living. Because I was asking him questions about like, how the heck do you, as a comedian, create an hour's worth of material and memorize it and make it engaging and all that stuff? Because I had to do a speech for an hour. So I was telling him, and he was telling me, Geo, I want you to think of your speech or your comedy thing, whatever. Think of it as an album that has a bunch of different tracks. I said, what? He said, yeah, it's just a 12-track album. That's how I look at my comedy. When he told me that, Fatima, I'll tell you, my speeches, you could tell me I got a speech in 10 minutes and I could go and do it because of the fact that he just gave me that one nugget. And again, when you are really passionate about what you do and you really believe in yourself, the other person who doesn't have time will make it. So he literally was like, save my number, lock it in. If you ever got any questions, call me. And I'm like, for real? Like, I didn't know you 24 hours ago. But he was like, nah, young kid, I can feel your energy, young blood. Like, I like what you're doing. Keep doing it. And I'm sitting here like, what did I do? Again, obviously there's favor from God. But it's
Yeah.
also like that, like you gotta realize that just because someone's successful or where you would like to be doesn't mean every day in their life is full of rainbows and sunshine. And sometimes when you go and talk to them and they get this opportunity to pour in, right? They get they feel good about it. And so you want to do that. There's a responsibility to be a mentee. I take that very seriously. And my job every time I'm a mentee is like I want to give this person a story that they can tell forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
that's the mentality.
I that is absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that we had time. I know that we're winding down.
Yeah.
Um, but this was thank you. Thank you so much. And it just makes sense. And, just speaking about purpose driven, it makes sense why God would have you be my first official speaker guest rather, for the Tima show. Because I feel like we talked about so many issues. And I think, lastly, we can really focus about your health scare. And I do recall that you were in the hospital at one time, and there's this health thing that you're working to overcome, and also therapy. So tell me a little bit more about, before we close, about your health and wellness journey,
Okay.
um, between just staying fit, because I'm part of the fit club too.
I
Hey.
know. Never miss a Monday. I'll be seeing you. You listen to me. I'm gonna tell you right now, like seeing you go as hard as you go, and it really is so inspiring because it's like there's moments I don't want to go, right? And then I see the development and I see the results and I see the enthusiasm and I'm like, sheesh, like I need that. Like I need that in my life. And so when you post what you post, and it really is inspiring to like see it and like literally like I'll be thinking like Mondays I'll be like, yo, I gotta go to the gym. Like I gotta go and do something. But you're doing it. You're doing it, and whether people confirm or say that to you, I just want you to know that people are watching. You go through your journey, and it's showing in other areas of your life. Like there's a vibration, a glow that I think
Thank
is
you
so
so
important for
much.
people to see.
Thank you. Thank you so much, bro. I'm
No,
trying. I'm trying. We're
I know it's a try. I know it's not given. It's take. You got to take it.
trying.
Um,
Listen.
I see you doing it's because of you. I did the 3.0 um 30 minutes incline joint. I'm like, yo,
Right. Isn't it good? Like,
it's good because it gives me the same calorie burn as me doing CrossFit without me feeling like my body gonna break.
yes.
So it's really good. But the journey with the health parts of this too, like you said, the therapy and then the going on a fitness journey. So like 3 years ago, I found out that I had type 2 diabetes. I think it was
Mm.
like 3 years ago about. And what happened was the symptoms were like I lost weight excessively, like 20 pounds in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
My vision got blurry where I couldn't see more than like 2, 3 feet ahead of me. Like I actually did a speech like that, like where I
Oh,
went to do a speech in Buffalo and I couldn't see the board, so I had to listen to the announcements. Like
wow.
that's how blurry my vision was. So I went to the hospital, stayed there for a couple of days. That was the first time. And at that time, there was a nurse. I thank God for this nurse. She told me, "You're lucky to be here." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm lucky to be here." She was like, "Your blood sugar was super high. Your blood pressure is super high, and your
Mm.
cholesterol is super high." She's like, "The fact that you came to the hospital on your own is a miracle."
Wow.
So she was like, "You're supposed to be in a coma right now. Like everything checks off the box, coma, and you over here having a conversation with me." So I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." And then she told me there's two types of people that typically comes to the hospital in your condition. Person one, they think that diabetes has them and they can't do nothing about it, right? So I got diabetes, it got me, whatever, and immediately they come here every time. They always come here. I always see them. The other person says, I have diabetes, which is they take autonomy, they take control over the situation, and they don't ever come back because they change. They make the adjustments. So I said, okay, good, I got it. I hear you loud and clear. I ain't never seen you again. Right. So I told her, I told her that. And I did good initially. Like it was cool. I did the things that I needed to do. And then fast forward to recently, December came or like November came, and my blurry vision came back. And it goes
Oh,
back to again entering this new season as being a dad and stuff. What I started to do to cope was eat. Right, I can't go and do my calling. I can't do any of that stuff. I'm just gonna eat. So DoorDash and I became best friends and started racking it up. And I ate whatever I felt like eating just to be able to get through the day. And then a lot of the things that I did to get in shape or to get the things back in order just went by the wayside. And then that blurry vision came back again. And then the weight started coming off really quickly. And I'm like, uh-oh, here we go again, right? And I never forget that morning, Fatima. Like that thing was so hard. I remember the night of. It's in my journal. It was like probably like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I literally said in the journal, "I'm going to the hospital today." Like I knew all the conditions lined up. I said, "I'm going to the hospital today, and I'm probably going to get admitted. I'm going to have to stay over." So that morning when I woke up, I told Marsha, I said, "I'm going to the ER right now." I packed my bag, and it was a tough moment because the first time I went, Marsha left me in the hospital, and she was crying. Right, the first time I went, the 3 years ago. Now, come December, we have a son now, and at the same time, we both had COVID at the time. So we both got COVID, a baby, and now I'm about to go to the hospital and leave Marsha with a baby, and she got COVID. So now I'm literally about to leave, and I touch Micah, which you can see him wide eyed looking at me now. Right,
look
I
here.
touch Micah, and I start crying like crazy because now I'm like, the stakes are higher.
Thanks,
How
sir.
could I possibly be so selfish in how I'm approaching my life to go and recklessly eat and now have to leave my son? Is this a foreshadow of what could happen if I don't change? So
Mm.
I broke down, I cried, I went to the hospital, they kept me for 3 days. And then I said, I literally, I was like, yo, I remember what the nurse said. And I said, I got to make the adjustments. And one of the things that I will tell you that really helped me this time around is admitting that I needed the help. So I need to stop thinking that I could graduate from something and always have a little bit of positive paranoia, like Mark Cuban says, and think that I could always get back. I never thought I could get back, so I never put any fences up. I'm
Because
like, these things ain't coming back.
right, and you've had this. I remember when we went back in your growing up, your childhood. We've had this moment that you used to go to your favorite spot so you can feel better. So
Yeah.
emotional eating has been a staple in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that when people they feel that they're excelling in other areas or self-managing in other areas, that this is an easy feat, but it's not.
Right, right. No, it's not. It's not. And again, like you said, you become. I'm a dysfunctional, functional person. I could do it, and everybody looks at you and say, "Oh my gosh, bro, you're doing great." And I'm like, I'm struggling. What you talking about? I'm doing great. Like I'm eating I'm eating a whole pie of pizza, and I gotta eat the boneless wings in one sitting, and get the diet soda, and like I'm going berserks, right now. But that idea of when I said you need to admit that you need help is like when the doctor comes out, and this is where God was really helpful because when I needed a doctor, I couldn't get a doctor for diabetes. Like all of them were like 3 months away, 3 months away. I got an immediate appointment with a doctor because I was in the emergency room.
Wow.
Literally, the lady was like, I'm overbooked, but tell the place to book you anyway and say that you saw me in the ER. Right. And that's how I got my doctor. And then this doctor's been so good because she gave me the hope. She said, Gio, we're going to fix this. She said, we're going to fix this. This is going to be easy. Like, don't worry about it. She empowered me. She literally was like, we are going to do this. And I said, and again, I went back to my mentoring relationship. I said, I'm gonna be the best story. Like that's the fit. I was like, I'm gonna become a testimony. When she done, she gonna be able to tell everybody. I had this guy. He was in the ER. Whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give her the story. I'm gonna give her the story. And so I went to her, and when I say don't trust yourself too much, when she told me, Gio, you're doing so great. We're about to reduce the medication. I said, cool. She said, see me in 2 months. I said, I don't trust myself. I got to see you in the same month. And she was like, you sure? I said, yeah, accountability. I normally run from it. I'm doing it differently this time. Every month we're going to meet each other. I'd rather come here and you tell me it's okay and I came for 2 minutes than for me to think I'm going to trust myself and not get here. I said, I'm not there yet. Like, there's no graduation. I need to still see you. And that's has been super helpful to reduce my insulin shots where I only take one a week versus I was doing 3-4 shots a day. A lot of those things have changed. Yeah. A
Oh
lot has
my
changed.
God.
A lot has changed in that regard. So it's just being proactive, and understanding like, listen, help doesn't mean, this is why I think there's a stigma. People think help means weakness. I look at help as ensuring success happens. It's not weakness. It's like, yo, if I got a nice car, I'm gonna get good insurance. I ain't gonna go and get the whack insurance. Like I'm going to protect my promise, right?
And
So for me, that's what I look at it from that perspective. When you say therapy, for example, before Micah now needs a nap and goes crazy, right? So um, therapy for me came up because at the time Marsha had became an assistant principal, and I
yeah.
noticed that I needed someone to talk to when I have a problem, and I knew her capacity to listen to me in this unknown season where things was coming too fast wouldn't come. And so in order for me to protect my marriage and not resent the fact that she wasn't present to hear my problems, I was proactive and said, let me get a therapist so that I do have a space to go and express myself so that I don't blame my wife for not giving me the space and now making her journey, which was already challenging, even more challenging. And so I did that. It was helpful. And I also would tell people, a lot of Black people say this: I want a Black therapist. And I was on that same boat. We was on the verge of the whole George Floyd stuff. So everybody was like, if it ain't Black, I ain't doing it, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm with it. I don't need a Black therapist. And so when they gave me my therapist, I saw the person's name and I looked the person up, and it was a white guy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this not gonna work. Like, right? Like I'm like, yo, he Black. This ain't gonna work, right? So then I said to myself, and I talked to God about it, and God was like, don't do that. Don't do that. Just go and talk to the person. And I want you to just have a conversation. Just have a conversation with the person. And so I had a conversation with the gentleman. And I said to him, I said, before I prejudge, let me just ask him a couple of questions and then I'll make my determination afterwards. So I asked him this one question. I said, why are you a therapist? And he was like, ever since I was younger, I saw the mental challenges people had, the conversations they had in their head. And I always wanted to go and help with that. So much so that when I was in college, I actually took 24 credits every semester so that I can get into the field faster to do the work. Once he said that, I no longer saw what color he was. I said, you were meant to do this. And that's all I needed to know that you my therapist. And now we've been rocking, I think September will probably make like 2 years. I think that we've been doing it. And literally it's just been so helpful for how I navigate this space as a dad, how I navigate entrepreneurship, how do I navigate past traumas that didn't I never validated, but now I'm able to have that conversation and understand myself at a higher level. Like all of that stuff came through therapy. And I think people always look at therapy as some type of reactive action. So it's like, yo, I fell off the cliff. And so because I fell off the cliff, I need therapy. I'm like, yo, I know there's a cliff. I don't got to wait to fall off it. I just need to make sure I don't get on it. So again, how do I get ahead of the thing? That's what I did with that situation. And I promise you, like, if I didn't do that, my marriage would have suffered because I would have unbeknowingly put a pressure on Marsha at a season where she couldn't take it. Like honestly, like if I gave her an ounce of what I was feeling in that moment, it would have broke her. Oh. And to have the space to be able to go and do that in therapy every Monday from at 7:15 to 8:00, that's where you'll find me. I'm in the therapy session every Monday, 7:15 to 8:00. Okay. And it's like, is anything wrong? No, I'm trying to just keep everything right.
Right. Oh, that is so good. Nothing's wrong. I'm just trying to keep everything right. I love that. I love that. I think that this is a great way to end. We are 30 minutes and Micah is ready for his nap. Before we go, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. God did not disappoint when he brought me to reach out to you and wanting to have you as my guest. And where can we reach out? I know that you said that you're not doing any motivational speaking stuff right now, but where can we find you? How can we support? If there are people who want to reach out to you because they were inspired by something you said during our time together, where can they find you?
Yeah, no, Instagram is the best place to find me. Geo Derice, Derice. On Instagram, I'm an open book. I really just want to help people, live out their purpose. I've gotten an awakening from people that my ministry is to make sure people live out theirs. And so, when it came from it came from somebody who I didn't think was going to talk about God, right? Like he was like, "Yo, I've been praying, I've been talking to God." I'm like, God, what are you doing right now? Like this is a random conversation and now it just goes into this place, but I needed to hear it because sometimes, you just gotta be reminded that you are on purpose. And there's times that you could forget that. And so in the Bible also has the word remember like hundreds of times because we be forgetting. But no, hit me up on Geo Derice on Instagram. If there's anything that stood out to you, I'd love to have the conversation. I do understand what it's like to not be able to talk what you are feeling, and I'm not a therapist by any means. I would strongly encourage you to do that. But if I can have a conversation, or if there's a question that's stopping you from doing it, I would be more than happy to share my experience in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much again. I really extend my gratitude to you. I know that this, it didn't take a time away from Micah, but because he's here. But I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your nuggets that you've learned along your way, along your journey. And the team show, we will be back with another episode real soon. And I hope you really enjoyed today's episode and come back. subscribe, and leave a review. All right. Bye.
Later.